Hello guys, Tops here. Today I wanna open the box of Pandora. And it's not my last video and definitely not my first video about Battleforged and NIMBLE. And I wanna make this video because I got quite often asked, especially from new players, how do I decide about Battleforged or NIMBLE, what weapons to choose and stuff like this. And today I want to just basically talk about the benefits of NIMBLE and Battleforged and the downsides. By the way, both perks are amazing and every bro, or at least almost every bro, is gonna take NIMBLE or Battleforged. So let's see. Okay, starting with NIMBLE. It's a level 7 perk. And what NIMBLE does, it reduces your HP damage that you take up to a maximum of 60%. So you wear light armor, which doesn't have more than 15 fatigue cost in total, and in return you get more fatigue, more initiative. You want to skill a lot of all your points in hit points, and you also benefit heavily from dodge because of the lighter armor, because you have more initiative. So that's kind of the idea of NIMBLE. Being fast and wearing light armor, having a lot of HP. Okay. Upside, you can be very good with NIMBLE. Let's say it differently. NIMBLE armor is very easy to find in the beginning. It's basically radar armor. And also a little bit of thugs armor. So all the light armor that you find super early is good for NIMBLE. So it's very easy to find normal NIMBLE armor. And here comes the downside. It is, you cannot buy high quality NIMBLE armor. That's a big downside, because you can buy in the armory, you can buy a quote of plates or a full helm, which is a Battleforged armor. It's very expensive, but you can buy it. But you cannot buy an assassin's robe or a Zweihänder helmet. You cannot buy that. Or an assassin's face mask. These are the best non-famed NIMBLE armors. And you cannot buy them. You have to either buy or loot assassins or Zweihänders, which are very rare opponents that are also extremely dangerous. So getting normal, non-famed, good NIMBLE armor is very hard to achieve, and it's very unlikely. Can take you a long time. Easy to get normal and bad NIMBLE armor, hard to get good one. It's not possible to buy them, except for the famed items in the shop, which are extremely expensive. But that is at least sometimes possible, but again, very rare. Okay, so that's about the armor. Upside, you can find it very early on, and it's very cheap because you just get it from the bandit fights. But it's very hard and very expensive and time consuming to get very good NIMBLE armor. Can take you very, very long time. As you can see, I am day 200 something and I still don't have a lot of famed Nimble armor. I only have one full set of famed Nimble armor at this point of the game. And I have multiple famed sets of Battleforged armor. Even have that, it's kind of Nimble Forged, but whatever. And I have multiple backpack Battleforged armors. And there's another thing about Nimble. You have less armor than Battleforged. And what that means is you're gonna take more HP damage. And there's one thing about Battleforged armor. If that armor is getting destroyed during a fight, you can just swap out the armor and I can go to the next fight. But I have that guy who is missing hit points and he also got wounded because he took a lot of HP damage. I have to wait. I can't swap HP or injuries. I have to wait until it heals. So that's a big downside of NIMBLE. Late game you can just swap around, you know, Battleforged armor like nothing. But Nimble armor don't have a lot of backpack Nimble armor because it's more rare. And I also don't have the time or let's say the ability to swap out HP or heal HP quickly. And you might say I can hire the cook, but just because how rounding works, the cook doesn't heal your HP faster, sadly, which is a big downside for me. It's sad, but what can you do? You can hire the surgeon to reduce the time of injury recovery, but yeah, that's another thing. Okay, let's talk about the basics of Battleforged. Battleforged is a perk that reduces your armor damage that you take. And it basically works like so. The more armor you have, the better it is. The less armor you have, it doesn't do shit at some point. So basically, if you are Battleforged, but you just have radar gear, so Nimble armor, that is gonna get destroyed in one hit. So for Battleforged, it is mandatory to have very heavy armor. And I think there is kind of a point. I think the returning value is, I think it starts at 280 or something like that. And I would recommend to not skill Battleforged on a guy before you have armor that is at least 200 plus for the helmet and for the body as well. That's my recommendation. And of course, you just want to buy the coat of plates and the helmets in the armories, you know? That's, I mean, the downside of Battleforged is it's very hard to loot the armor. Some knights have it, and maybe some brigand leaders can have it. But as the game progresses, you're gonna find a lot of famed Nimble Battleforged armor at the legendary locations. So that's one thing. Also, another thing. Hedge Knights, Oath Takers and other backgrounds might have heavy Battleforged armor. And you can buy it at the armory, which is, I think these ones are around 10k and these ones are around 5k for most of the time. So it's very expensive, but money is not a big problem in Battle Brothers. You find a lot of money and you can buy yourself Battleforged armor. It's very nice that you can buy yourself basically into it. Okay. The fact that your protection goes down when you lose armor means basically a not repaired Battleforge armor will make you defenseless pretty quickly. So you want to have always spare armor if possible, or you want to wait until your armor is repaired and before you take the next fight. And there's another requirement. Now we are talking about melee defense. If your brothers have low melee defense, like something 25 or less, like that guy, 20 melee defense. If you have a bro who can only reach 20 melee defense, it is not worth making him Battleforge. Because if you have low melee defense, your armor is gonna get destroyed very, very fast. And therefore, the perk Battleforge doesn't have a lot of value, sadly. So for me, the rule of thumb is, if you cannot reach 30 melee defense, you cannot be Battleforged. That's my personal requirement. And you can say, if it's like, you know, high 20s and he's gonna get there with a couple of veteran levels, you can say, okay, I can still make him Battleforged, but he's gonna be a little bit worse than the others. And I need to play him more carefully, at least in the beginning. I mean, that guy is an archer, but he has 28 melee defense, so you kind of get the point. Okay, this is one side. So low melee defense brothers are, for me, a good candidate for Nimble. And now we are coming to the next thing. Battleforge is very stat intensive, in my opinion, but it is less perk intensive. So, if you hire a bro who has average stats or worse stats, you kind of have to make him Nimble, because you cannot make him a good Battleforge guy most of the time. But if you have a guy who has very good stats, you can make him Battleforge and he can become amazing. You're gonna have, because Battleforge gives you so much more tankiness and you have more stats, you have more free perks that you can invest in damage perks like Berserk and Killing Frenzy. Okay. I lost my point, I think. Did I? Where did I stop? Okay. Alright, Battleforge. Requirements for me personally. Again, Nimble is kind of a default option. Battleforge is the advanced option for good bros. What is necessary for Battleforge? Obviously, for melee bros, high melee skill is always necessary. So that's a baseline. Except for tanks. But in general, for every other damage build, you need high melee skill. For Battleforge, I would go for 30 plus melee defense for a brother who is level 11. Including gifted. Okay. I also go for 90 hit points. At least I try to go for 90 hit points. 50 resolve is also something I want to get on Nimble and Battleforge. And then for fatigue, everything else into fatigue. I want a lot of fatigue, as much as I can get on Battleforge. Because my armor is way more heavy and my weapons most of the time as well. So I have a higher fatigue penalty from wearing heavier armor and weapons. So I'm also going to be a damage dealer, so I will use more fatigue. And if I don't have enough fatigue, it's going to be an issue. And I aim for having at least 50, 60, 70 usable fatigue, maybe after Brawny, in order to become a damage dealer Battleforged, a Battleforged damage dealer. And this is kind of the upside of Nimble, because you wear lighter armor with a maximum penalty of 15 fatigue. You have way more fatigue that you can convert into damage. So stuff like mace duelists, even I made this guy an X duelist. I found the very high damage X. These guys benefit very heavily from being nimble, because wearing lighter armor makes you having more fatigue, which returns into more damage, especially for weapons that are very fatigue intensive, like the one-handed mace, where you hit 3 times per turn. So that's a benefit, having more fatigue for lighter armor. There's another downside of Nimble. You need to invest a lot of points into hit points. And good Nimble guys gonna have 130, 120 hit points. But a lot of the time, I can only get my Nimble guys to roughly the same amount of hit points as my Battleforged guys. And that's because I value hit points very high for my builds. I try to get a lot of hit points. And most of my Battleforged builds have 90 plus hit points. Sometimes even 100. This guy has 107 hit points. My Nimble guy has 112 hit points. But that guy has double the amount of armor, and his armor damage is gonna be reduced significantly. So if you take these guys in comparison, my Battleforged guy is gonna tank way more hits than my Nimble guy. Way more hits. So that's one thing to consider. Again, you're gonna trade light armor for more fatigue, but you need in return more HP to compensate that. And that makes Nimble, in my opinion, worse late game and very you are very prone to catastrophic failures. So if you get gone on by stuff like a big axe, a man splitter, maces, your Battleforged guy can't tank more hits because he has so much armor, but your Nimble guy's first hit, armor gone. And after that it's like one shot, you are done. Bye bye. Even with a 60% reduction, it's most of the time it's just too much. And the Battleforged guys, they have so much spare armor and so much HP at the same time. If you build Battleforged tanky, like I like to do it, it is just more tanky than Nimble late game. But it also has a higher requirement, which is kind of another thing. Late game, you're gonna go for higher recruits. I really like my Hedge Knights. I like to recruit my Hedge Knights for Battleforge. And I think Hedge Knights are the best backgrounds for Battleforged. Because Hedge Knights have very high base HP. A Hedge Knight with Colossus is basically at 80 HP. So I take 2 high rolls in HP and that guy is at 90 HP all the time. A Hedge Knight also has very high base fatigue and resolve. So I take 2 high rolls in HP, 2 high rolls in resolve, and he's done. He's perfect. I have not to invest anything more. And if you have a trait like Fearless, you don't have to invest anything into resolve. You can just put everything into fatigue. And the other two roles, of course, you take melee defense and melee skill every other time. Like melee defense, melee skill all the time, and then you decide if you go for hit points, fatigue, or resolve. And yeah, for Nimble, it is different. You kind of want to get 40 resolve as well. So you might have to take, again, let's say you take 2 high rolls on resolve. Maybe you want to take 2 high rolls in fatigue as well. Just because you are nimble doesn't mean you cannot use more fatigue. And everything else you're going to put into hit points. And it's kind of like, if you low roll hit points and you low roll resolve, most of the time there's like a decent roll at fatigue, right? So that's one thing. Okay. Another very good background for Battleforged, my second most bought background for Battleforged are, do I have one? Adventurous Nobles. I don't have one here, sadly, but they are like Hedge Knights, but just less reliable. They can have more melee attack and melee defense on average, but their HP is lower, the fatigue is lower. Like Adventurous Nobles have a max roll of 105 fatigue. This is the min roll for the Hedge Knight, but they have high resolve. So I think Adventurous Noble have 50 resolve at least on average. So you don't have to put anything into resolve. That's very nice for the Adventurous Noble. Okay, good Nimble backgrounds are backgrounds that have high base HP and or high melee defense, in my opinion. Now, let's not talk about the melee defense. For Nimble, you want high HP. And stuff like farmhands, thieves are very good for Nimble. You also kind of want a high initiative because you take dodge a lot of the time. The assassins are very good for Nimble builds. Oath Takers are kind of okay for Nimble builds because they have less fatigue but higher HP. The downside of Oath Taker is they are never great of being nimble because they cannot have stars on their HP. So you will never get a perfect nimble Oath Taker, sadly. And that's kind of why I have a love-hate relationship with Oath Takers. They have not enough fatigue for being Battleforged most of the time. The hit points are okay, but they are worse than the Hedge Knight hit points, and they cannot have stars. So they are not great for Nimble either. You can argue that a Hedge Knight is better suited for Nimble as the Oath Taker, and that makes him super weird for me, at least. So again, that guy has very high resolve, at least, but negative range defense. So again, love-hate relationship with Oath Takers. Again, if you have negative range defense, dodge is very nice, and dodge is something that goes very well with Nimble, because it gives you more ranged and melee defense based on your current initiative. And now we are coming to perks. Let's discuss perks. I said Nimble is less stat intensive, but more perk intensive. Battleforge is less perk intensive, but more stat intensive. And because you take bros that have higher base stats and make them into Battleforge, you can have less perks that make you a tankier. make you tankier. You need less perks. Okay. So for Battleforge, of course you go Battleforge. And then there's another defensive perk. And it's called Steel Bow. And Steel Bow prevents headshot bonus damage. That's what I take on my on all of my Battleforge guys. It's a very nice perk. I'm playing a Headhunter company currently, and it can make a shit ton of difference. If you get hit in the head, you can actually get one-shotted if you don't have Steel Bow by big weapons, if you have less than 85 HP. And you can actually get two-shotted even then. So it's like not having Steel Bow is very bad against big weapons. And your Battleforge guys and your Nimble guys will just disappear when they get headshotted by big weapons. So this is what I take on Battleforge. Underdog is another defensive perk. But I take these on basically every frontliner. Nimble and Battleforge, same for Colossus. I take that on every hero basically. It increases your hit points significantly. Obviously it has more returning value on Nimble because you pump everything into hit points. So it's mandatory for Nimble, but I kind of find it mandatory on Battleforge as well. It's just too good. And now we are coming to the part where it's like Battleforge, let's say Battleforge and Steel Bow is kind of the combo that I do with Battleforged. And let's assume that Colossus Underdog are taken for all of my bros, more or less. Okay, let's go to my Nimble guy. And here we have it. My Nimble guy has Nimble and Dodge. Okay. Dodge gives you more melee and range defense depending on your current initiative, which is very good. It's a lot of melee defense. But the more fatigue you use, the less initiative you have. And if you use the wait command, you're gonna lose initiative as well. So the longer the battle goes, the less dodge you have. That's a problem. Big problem. There's a perk that helps you deal with that problem. Did I have it? I didn't take it on my guys. Did I? No, I didn't. Okay. And this is the perk Relentless. Relentless gives you only 50% of the current fatigue penalty, and it removes the penalty from the wait command. So it keeps your initiative basically high at every point of the battle. So this is a very nice perk in combination with dodge. So if you are playing Nimble, you have less stats, you have significantly less armor. Again, melee defense most of the time lower. Hit points a little bit higher than Battleforge, but most of the time not that higher. Resolve, same. Fatigue, same. So, we kinda need to get more defense, because if we lose our armor, which happens very fast if you don't have Battleforge and just light and medium armor, you're gonna lose your armor in like 2 or 3 hits from small and medium weapons, and your armor is gone and you're half HP. The next hit is gonna kill you. So you kinda need dodge in order to get more ranged and melee defense. But playing dodge without Relentless leaves you vulnerable in later turns. And you kinda rely on already winning the battle at this point. But late game, you're gonna fight giant camps, like 30, 40 enemies, and it's just a mess. Games go a long time, and your initiative is gonna be very low. Your Nimble bros will have the same initiative as your Battleforge bros, because they're completely stamped out if you don't have recover. And here is something else. Recover goes very well with dodge. But let's assume our damage dealers all have recover. So let's not take that too much in account. Okay, we are already at another perk. We take Nimble, dodge, and we kinda want Relentless to become more tanky. But we don't have Steel Bow. So if we get headshotted, we're gonna take 50% more HP damage, which is reduced by 60% for max Nimble. But it's still more damage. So we kinda wanna have Steel Bow as well, just to be protected. Especially if you play a duelist in the front line, right? We're gonna get hit a lot. And a smart man did the calculation and basically said, over the course of the battle, Steel Bow gives you the same stat bonus as Colossus, sometimes even more. Because you take less damage, or no additional damage from the headshot, which is 25% of the time. And yes, so that's a second perk that we kinda wanna have in order to increase our defense. And now there's another problem. Because we have low armor, stuff like cleavers that can make bleed happen are incredibly dangerous. And we are way more likely, because of our less armor value, to get hit with a cleaver. Do I have a cleaver? Here. The cleaver mastery, right. If you inflict a certain amount of HP damage, you're gonna inflict bleed. Yes. Or just maybe just if you hit sometimes. So your Nimble guys are extremely vulnerable to bleeds. Stacking 2 bleeds on them will just kill them. So because we are less defensive, because we have less stats on our Nimble guy, and also we take less perks, we have less armor that makes us more defensive. We are way more vulnerable to status effects like bleeding. Also stuff like poison is kind of annoying, but not that bad. But bleeding is our killer. So you kind of want to have resilient as well, which reduces bleeding by 1 turn. So, in my opinion, getting the same tankiness out of Nimble requires you to have 3 perks more. And of course, let's assume we have insane famed Nimble gear and famed Battleforged armor. Let's say that. So it's comparable, right? And let's just assume that we have HP, Battleforged guy that has 100 HP, let's say. That's kind of what I aim for Battleforged, 90 to 100 HP. Let's say we have 120 HP Nimble. Okay, so we are fairly close in HP, but we take less HP damage, but it is more likely that we take HP damage because we have significantly less armor. So Nimble is less tanky than Battleforged unless we invest heavily with 3 additional defensive perks into Nimble. which can be nice if you play nimble tanks. But for a damage dealer, you are missing then the perks that you want to invest into, you know, Duelist, Killing Frenzy, Berserk. Fearsome is not a damage perk per se, but you know what I mean. A weapon mastery. We are missing perks. And especially if you want to play one-handed nimble duelist, duelists are also very perk intensive, because you need an extra perk, and then you end up with a duelist that doesn't have Killing Frenzy, because you don't have the perk. And my nimble duelist doesn't even have dodge, nor does he have relentless or resilient. And as you guys can see, that guy already died once. So I can tell you, nimble falls off late game pretty quickly, except for nimble tanks. But normal nimble frontliners fall off very quickly. Even if you have the famed armor at that time, or just the normal armor, which is very hard to get, you're gonna fall off very fast. And you're just gonna get destroyed by all the big strong enemies that are just gonna two-shot you. There's another thing also. You have less armor, so you are way more likely to take hit points damage, even when it is decreased significantly by 60%, let's say. There's still a higher chance that you get injured. And again, as I said in the beginning, you can swap armor like nothing, just a mouse click, but you cannot swap HP or injuries. You're gonna wait until they heal, which is a big problem. So you might have to backpack your bro and put another bro in the front line. Here's another problem. If you play stuff like Lone Wolf or Gladiators, you cannot backpack bros. You don't have spare bros that you can just swap in. So again, nimble becomes less desirable late. It has a lot of problems. It is great though for guys like backliners who are not in combat. Stuff like range guys. Maybe your banner, because you want to have a lot of fatigue on your banner, so you can use active spells like rally. And let's talk about the nimble tank. The benefits about the nimble tank is you have more usable fatigue from being nimble, so you can indom constantly and also shield wall. So you can spam indom and shield wall constantly, which makes you very resilient. Also, you can take perks like Resilience, Steel Braw, maybe even Relentless with dodge, so you can become a giga tank. But nimble tanks, again, are very easy to make, because nimble is kind of the default option. Basically, any thief can become a nimble tank. Let's assume he doesn't roll horribly or has bad traits. Even the mediocre thieves can become very strong nimble tanks. And if they have stars in melee defense, they become insane nimble tanks. And nimble tanks are nice even in the late game, assuming you can swap them in and out. But there's also a place for having one Battleforged tank, which is nice and required in some specific fights, in my opinion. Stuff like Sunken Library and the Monolith. It's very nice to have a Battleforged tank. Battleforged tanks are also very nice in some beast fights. And it's just, in general, a good built Battleforged tank is the most tankiest bro in the game, I would say. And he's gonna get surrounded by everybody and you just don't care, because he's so tanky. Again, another thing, you kinda build your Battleforged guys with two-handers a lot, because they have more fatigue, because that's a requirement for Battleforge. So you can give them additional defense by stacking reach advantage. Another thing that you can kinda do with Nimble, but most of the time you don't do that. But you could do that. I like to play one-handed weapons with Nimble a lot, so a lot of duels. So yeah, I mean, you can make backliners like that guy and give them reach advantage as well. It's an option, but yeah, again, it's kind of, my point is, Nimble is significantly easier to make. It is very easy to make them early, and it makes your company become powerful early. Battleforge is harder to make. It requires better bros, more expensive gear, but you can buy more expensive gear and more expensive bros as soon as you have a decent company. So you kinda want to use your Nimble bros to get Battleforge bros, if that makes sense. Nimble early game to snowball, and then buy all the hedge knights in the world and give them all the nice Battleforge armor, which is expensive there. You can say roughly a full Battleforge armor with a hedge knight costs you 20k to buy, roughly. A Nimble guy costs you nothing. Costs you a thief and radar armor. It's like not even 1k. Most guys can be decent Nimble bros, so it's very cheap, very effective early on, but later you want to switch to Battleforge. And even late game, you kind of want to have a mixed team in your roster, so you can make use of the Nimble and the Battleforge armor. And there's also NIMBLEFORGE, which I did on this guy, which is a hybrid build, which is very specific, and I cannot recommend it unless you know what you are doing and you have very specific Nimble armor. Like that armor, for instance, it doesn't have enough resistance, durability for Battleforge, but it is too heavy for Nimble. So it could be decent for NIMBLEFORGE, combined with an Assassin's head wrap which has no weight. You will only receive 84% armor damage and only 47 HP damage. It's a hybrid build that is very specific. It requires a specific bro most of the time and a specific armor, so it's something for very late. It is less tanky than Battleforge, and it's kind of, yeah, very specific, most of the time a meme build. But if you find a very good, for instance, a hedge knight with the tough trait, which gives him more HP, and I recruited a hedge knight who had, I think, 82 base HP, and then he had stars, so you know this guy will have, I don't know, 130, 140 HP with Colossus. So then you can think about NIMBLEFORGE, you know? But it requires a very special bro and very special armor, so I don't want to talk too much about that topic. It's very specific. And it's something that I not recommend for players who don't know what they are doing. And you're gonna see it when the time is coming. Then you will know what to do with your NIMBLEFORGE boy. Yeah, did I miss anything? Do I want to talk about anything? Yes. I think the natural scaling is Nimble, very good early on, falls off late game, and then you get stuff like the Irok armor, the Conqueror's armor, and it's like you really want to build Battleforge boys at this point. And you want to make your Battleforge tanky, and you need tanky backgrounds for that. Stuff like the Hedge Knight with increased hit points, increased resolve, increased fatigue, and also increased melee defense. It's more expensive, but it is overall the most tanky version. And there is also Battleforged Neutral, which basically means you swap out Berserk for more defensive perks like reach advantage, quick hands, or dodge. You don't spend as much points in fatigue, and you pump a lot of points in hit points and resolve, and you just be very tanky. It hit once per turn. That's kind of your point. And you have a reach weapon and a normal weapon, and you kind of quick hands, you know, and then you hit. That's kind of Battleforged Neutral. It's not my playstyle, but that doesn't mean that it is bad. It's kind of a budget Battleforge build. It's basically, in my opinion, designed for Battleforge guys that are not good enough to be full Battleforged. So for mediocre bows who don't have that much fatigue to spare, Battleforged Neutral can be something. It's also more or less the only build that works with Swordmasters very well. So it's good for that as well. Yeah, anything else about Battleforge versus Nimble? Again, Nimble tanks are late game, very strong, and can be even situationally superior to Battleforge tanks, depending on the build and the fight and stuff like that. So having 3 or 4 tanks, I always have one Battleforge tank with Lone Wolf perk, and then maybe 2 or 3 Nimble tanks. That's nice to have late game. And in fights that are against big beasts and they're scary, you want to have indom tanks constantly in your front line, 3 or 4 of them. So we want to swap them out for your duelists that don't do much against Unholds, for instance, that don't have a lot of armor or no armor. But you want to have tanks that can actually tank the Unhold. So Nimble is very good late game for that as well. And yeah, everything else, all your damage dealers, all your frontliners, and even like the War Scythe, who is kind of a backline, but not really, I made him Battleforge. You kind of want to transition, the longer the game goes, to more Battleforge. And start on early with Nimble to snowball your run, get ahead of the game, get all the money in the world from the big contracts, the big fights, and then buy your Hedge Knights and your Battleforge armor. It's kind of, yeah, endgame. I think Battleforge is endgame. Nimble is early and mid game, falls off late game. Can be still strong, but Battleforge is stronger if you build it like this, in my opinion. And yes, something else. There was something else. Yes, okay. I know some people love Nimble and some people love Battleforge. I like Battleforge more than I like Nimble. But you can beat the game with only Nimble and only Battleforge. You can beat the game with both. Any combination of these two. And a very popular YouTuber, Fitting Friendly, is beating the game with no armor at all. Isn't that crazy? He doesn't have armor and all of his bros. And he still beat the game. So it's possible. You can do it with Nimble, with Battleforge. It's a lot about playstyle. Both have their ups and downs, and it's a lot about your current situation, your current items, your current bros, and your current run. Sometimes you get lucky, you find a lot of good bros that you can make into Battleforge, and sometimes you just have a bunch of mediocre bows that are too bad for Battleforge, so you kind of have to make them Nimble, and you pray for finding the good Hedge Knights, the God hires. that you get once every 100 or 200 days. Yeah. Okay. I think I opened the box of Pandora. I opened the can of worms. I talked a lot, and I think there's a lot to discuss in the comments. And it's probably not going to be my last video on this topic. I like to talk about Battleforged versus NIMBLE, so I'm gonna see you in the comments, guys. Thank you so much for watching, if you watched until now. I almost went for 1 hour talking. Insane. It's such a topic. You could talk the whole day about it. Again, see you in the comments. Please like, comment and subscribe to support the algorithm if you like my content. And if you don't like my content, please like or dislike and subscribe as well. YouTube will know. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'm going to see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.